I didn't expect my life to collapse overnight. And yet, that's exactly what happened. My name is Daniel, and for as long as I can remember, I thought I had control over my life. Steady job, small but cozy apartment, a girlfriend I loved, and a sense of self I rarely questioned. But life has a way of showing you that the things you cling to the most are often the ones you can't hold on to. I remember the day clearly. It started like any other. A meeting at work, a cup of coffee that tasted a little too bitter, and Isabella texting me about her plans for the evening. She had that usual spark in her messages, full of warmth and teasing, the way she always knew how to make me smile even when I didn't feel like it. I wanted to believe I was content, that nothing could shake the foundation I had built so carefully around myself. But it turns out, life doesn't care about careful plans. I grew up in a house where appearances mattered more than feelings. My parents were kind in their own way, but strict in how they envisioned who I should be. Clothes, mannerisms, the way I spoke, all carefully guided by their idea of normal. I didn't realize it then, but the seed of transformation was planted long before I understood what it meant. Even as a child, I felt drawn to the delicate textures, the soft fabrics, the tiny details of femininity that the world told me I couldn't have. I buried it under layers of conformity. I told myself it was just a phase, a harmless curiosity, a secret to tuck away and never mention. Over time, I learned how to present myself as someone the world would accept, a man with clear boundaries, predictable routines, and little room for questioning. And then came Isabella. She wasn't like anyone I had ever met. Bold, confident, intuitive. She could see right through my carefully constructed walls. She didn't just accept me. She seemed to genuinely want to understand every part of me, every quirk and hesitation. But I couldn't tell her everything, not yet. Some things, I realized, could never be explained without revealing truths about myself I wasn't ready to face. It was during those quiet nights when she worked late or traveled to see her friends that the urge returned. The dresses, the makeup, the persona I had never fully abandoned, they called to me like a whisper from another life. My small apartment became a sanctuary of forbidden identity, a place where the rules I lived under no longer applied. I could explore, I could feel, I could become someone completely different, but only when I was alone. I still remember my first attempt to fully embrace that hidden side. I wasn't doing it for thrill, not for rebellion. I wasn't even entirely sure why I needed it. I only knew that when I put on the dress, when I smoothed the fabric over my skin and applied makeup with trembling hands, I felt whole, complete, alive. The mirror became both a friend and an enemy. It reflected the version of me I had never allowed the world to see, and reminded me how fragile my carefully maintained reality truly was. Every glance was a battle between fear and desire, between shame and exhilaration. And now, everything had shifted. A sudden layoff at work. My apartment lease ending. Financial insecurity pressing from all sides. The carefully constructed life I had relied on for so long had begun to crumble, and with it, my sense of identity. I realized almost with horror that I was standing at a crossroads. I could try to reclaim the version of myself everyone thought they knew, the man I had been pretending to be, or I could finally let the other side take over. The side I had nurtured quietly for years. The side that made me feel alive. The side that was ready to claim me fully, no matter the cost. And that's when I understood something terrifying and liberating at the same time. I had already lost everything. I had nothing left to hold me back. The dresses in my closet, the wigs carefully stored away, the makeup I kept hidden, they were no longer a secret I feared losing. They had become my only anchor to a version of life I could still shape. The life where I didn't have to apologize for who I was. And in that realization, a dangerous thought crept into my mind. If I had lost everything else, why not lose the boundaries of who I thought I was, too? That night, I made a choice I would never be able to undo. The first night alone was the hardest. Isabella was gone for a late meeting, and my apartment felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. I stared at the closet, at the dresses and wigs I had hidden for years, and felt my chest tighten. Part of me screamed to leave them, to pretend this side of me didn't exist. Another part was already reaching out. I had a box tucked behind my dresser, labeled childhood things. It was almost ceremonial. The dresses, the shoes, the accessories, all folded and preserved as if waiting for a moment like this. My fingers shook as I lifted the lid. Memories came rushing back. The softness of fabric brushing my skin, the quiet pride I felt when I followed instructions to the letter, the subtle shame when no one knew my thoughts. The first dress I touched was pale lavender, delicate and small. I ran my fingers along the seams, and my heartbeat accelerated. Not from excitement, at least I told myself it wasn't. It was fear. The kind of fear that sits in your stomach and makes your hands tremble. I slipped it over my head, feeling the familiar brush of fabric against my shoulders. My body reacted in ways I hadn't anticipated. My muscles loosened. A strange confidence bloomed. The reflection in the mirror startled me. A part of me recognized the child I once was, but there was something new now. Something adult, something dangerous. I had control here. And yet, I was more vulnerable than I had ever been. Next came the wig, a soft chestnut brown. As I fitted it onto my head, adjusting the strands to sit naturally, I caught myself smiling faintly. It looked ridiculous. It felt ridiculous. And yet it felt right. I was transforming, layer by layer, into someone entirely new, someone completely herself. But with each change, my thoughts raced. What if Isabella came home early? What if she saw me like this? Would she understand? Would she accept it? Or be disgusted? The questions clawed at me, but the answer didn't stop my hands. I continued, carefully applying makeup I hadn't touched in years. Blending foundation, shading the eyes, brushing lipstick onto my lips with trembling precision. Every motion was deliberate, ritualistic. Every sensation magnified. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. I experimented with poses, movements, expressions. Walking across the room, sitting, standing, adjusting my posture. High heels clicked against the hardwood, each step echoing in the silence. I felt exhilarated and terrified at once. I was performing for no one, and that made it both liberating and perilous. The fear of being caught lingered like a shadow. Every noise outside made me flinch. The creak of the elevator, a car pulling up, a neighbor's laugh through the walls. Each sound reminded me of the stakes. One mistake, and my secret, my freedom, would be shattered. And then came the internal struggle. Part of me wanted to abandon the ritual, take off the dress, shove the wig back in its box, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But another part, an insistent, daring part, whispered, "You can't go back now. You know this is who you are." I stared at my reflection, at the curves and contours of someone both familiar and unknown. I realized that this transformation wasn't just about clothes or makeup. It was about identity, control, and the thrill of being seen as who I truly was, even if only by myself. The suspense escalated as the hours ticked by. I knew Isabella could return any moment. Every sound made me jump. My mind replayed scenarios, her opening the door early, seeing me in this form, questioning, screaming, leaving. Yet, the thought of going back, of removing everything, returning to normal, felt unbearable. By the time the night was halfway gone, I had fully transformed. Every detail meticulously arranged. And yet, I was exhausted, trembling from adrenaline, excitement, and anxiety. I realized I was teetering on the edge of discovery. One wrong move could expose me. And then I heard it. A key in the lock. I froze. Heart pounding. Breath caught in my throat. My reflection in the mirror seemed to mock me, a version of myself caught between two worlds. Every second stretched into eternity. I had a choice. Hide, risk confrontation, or embrace the moment fully. The suspense was unbearable, but in that tension, I understood something profound. This was no longer just a secret. This was part of me, dangerous, liberating, and undeniable. The night ended with Isabella still unaware, but the transformation had changed me. Physically, emotionally, mentally, I was no longer just Daniel. I was her. And the knowledge of that change brought both exhilaration and dread. I knew that nothing could remain the same after this night. The next evening, I thought I was prepared. Isabella had gone out again, this time for a late dinner with her family. Alone in my apartment, I let myself breathe, but only for a moment. The dress from the night before lay neatly folded on the bed, the wig waiting like a challenge. I had rehearsed it in my head, every step, every pose. But rehearsal couldn't prepare me for the way my hands shook as I reached for the fabric. The adrenaline was a constant hum in my veins, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. I slipped the dress on again, feeling the familiar brush of the fabric, the snug hug around my waist. I applied the makeup slowly, deliberately, every brushstroke a reminder of the transformation that was no longer temporary. I felt alive, beautiful, dangerous. But tonight was different. The quiet that usually allowed me freedom was fractured by a sound I couldn't ignore, a knock at the door. "Daniel? It's your neighbor. I think you left your window open. Can I come in?" Panic hit like a punch to the stomach. I froze mid-motion, wig in hand, makeup halfway done. My mind raced. If she saw me like this, everything would collapse. The dress, the wig, the years of secrecy, gone in an instant. I forced myself to stay calm, pretending my apartment was just as ordinary as it had always been. Sure," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. She stepped inside, chatting casually, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Every step she took made the heels I'd chosen click too loudly. Every glance toward the mirror sent my pulse skyrocketing. I laughed nervously at something she said, hoping she wouldn't notice the tremor in my hands. My mind was a battlefield of fear and desire. Do I hide? Do I run? Do I stop being her? But I couldn't. The moment I thought about removing the dress, the wig, the makeup, a part of me rebelled. A part of me had tasted freedom, control, and identity in a way I never had before. And I couldn't give it up. The neighbor left eventually, leaving me shaking, my heart racing. I collapsed onto the couch, taking in deep, trembling breaths. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye. She was there, vulnerable, radiant, unmistakably me. It was then that the real twist happened. Isabella came home. Not late this time. Earlier than expected. Her footsteps in the hall made my stomach twist. Every second stretched, the air thick with tension. I could hear her entering the apartment, her keys dropping on the counter. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a warning. I tried to compose myself, but it was too late. She stepped into the living room and froze. Her eyes went wide. I froze. The dress, the wig, the makeup. Every secret I had kept for years was on display, illuminated by the soft light of the apartment. "Daniel," she whispered, voice trembling between disbelief and confusion. I wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize, but no words came. My mouth felt dry, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Every instinct screamed to flee, to remove the evidence, to pretend it wasn't real. Instead, I sat, frozen, letting her take it all in. And then she said it. You're beautiful," she said softly. The disbelief in her voice mingled with awe. I didn't know. Her words hit me like a tidal wave. Relief. Fear. Hope. Shame. Desire. Every emotion collided inside me, making me feel like I might shatter or explode. "Isabella, my voice cracked. I didn't mean. I never wanted." She stepped closer, eyes searching mine. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me?" The questions cut deep, but the answers were tangled in years of fear, secrecy, and shame. I opened my mouth again, but instead of words, a shiver ran through me. I realized something terrifying. I couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. And then came the symbolic moment that would mark everything. My wig slipped from my head, tilting just slightly. The mirror reflected both of us, the man I had always been, the woman I had become, and the girlfriend staring at me with emotions I couldn't yet decode. I reached to adjust it, but Isabella's hand caught mine. Her touch was firm, grounding, yet gentle. "You don't have to hide anymore," she whispered. The apartment was silent, save for the sound of our breathing. And in that silence, I realized how fragile and yet powerful this moment was. Everything hung in balance. Our relationship, my identity, our trust. One wrong word, one reaction, and it could all collapse. But in that same silence, I felt something else. Freedom, acceptance, and a fear that was no longer about being caught, but about letting go entirely. Because I knew, without a doubt, that nothing after this would ever be the same.